They lost everything but were still alive. But what happened next broke their hearts. Our story begins in the early 1900s. Back then, the world wasn't as connected as it is today. People traveled by boat across the sea. It was exciting, but also dangerous. And that's exactly what happened to one family. A man named Eugene Bishop owned a small ship called the Corsair. He used it to transport cargo around the coast of Newfoundland. But one day he decided to take his wife and 6 children on a trip. They wanted to visit some relatives who lived on a different island. So they set sail and everything seemed fine at first. The water was calm, the sun was shining, and the family enjoyed being on the open sea. But soon the weather started to change. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and the wind began to pick up speed. Suddenly, waves as high as mountains started crashing against their ship. The family knew that they were in grave danger. This was more than just a storm. As they struggled to keep control of the ship, Eugene shouted, "Hold on tight, everyone." But even as he said this, he knew it might be too late. The storm was ripping their ship apart. The waves tossed the Corsair around like a toy. It was as if the sea itself was trying to swallow them whole. Just when all hope seemed lost, something incredible happened. A huge Newfoundland dog named Capsize jumped into action. Capsize wasn't just any dog. He belonged to a breed known for its incredible strength and courage in the water. And now his time to shine had come. With a mighty leap, Capsize disappeared into the raging sea. Everyone watched in suspense as the dog battled against the waves. Without hesitation, he began to swim towards the nearest piece of floating debris. With each stroke, he moved further away from the sinking ship. Meanwhile, on the Corsair, panic had begun to spread. Mrs. Bishop screamed, "Oh God, our poor children, we're going to lose them." As she watched her children get swept away by the waves, she couldn't believe their tiny figures bobbing in the turbulent waters. The youngest, only 2-year-old Master Bishop, had been separated from the rest. But then a miracle occurred. Through the driving rain and howling wind, Mrs. Bishop spotted Capsize swimming back towards them. In his mouth, he had a piece of wood. He dropped it gently beside her and barked frantically. She understood. He was telling her to hold on to the piece of wood and keep calm. Somehow she managed to grab it. Then she saw Capsize disappear again into the churning waters. He was off to save someone else. Over and over, Capsize swam to each member of the Bishop family. He either carried them on his back or towed them along beside him. One by one, he brought them to safety. Meanwhile, the storm continued to rage. The wind and the waves seemed determined to destroy everything in their path. But through it all, Capsize never faltered. He guided the family members to pieces of debris that were floating in the water. He nudged them with his nose, making sure they held on tight. Then, with barks of encouragement, he would help them stay afloat. As the night wore on, the temperature dropped. The wind grew colder, biting into their exposed skin. The family members huddled together on their makeshift rafts, trying to keep warm. They were exhausted, scared and freezing. But they had to keep going. Throughout the night, Capsize kept coming back for more. Even when the sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn, he didn't stop. Whenever a wave threatened to pull someone under, Capsize was there with a powerful stroke of his legs, pushing them back up above the waves. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the storm began to weaken. The wind no longer screamed, and the waves didn't crash as violently. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through the clouds, the family saw light on the shore. Hope surged through them. With renewed strength, they waved their arms and shouted for help. Capsize barked furiously, trying to attract attention. Their cries were weak, but someone heard them. Rescuers arrived and pulled the family members out of the water. One by one, they were wrapped in warm blankets, but nobody noticed Capsize. The dog had disappeared. The family was safe, but they were unaware of the true extent of their dog's heroism. Eugene Bishop had been thrown clear of the ship and had somehow managed to cling onto a piece of the wreckage. The storm had knocked him unconscious for a while, and when he finally came to, he was alone. He looked around frantically, calling out, "Mary, are you here? Children, where are you?" But only the wind answered him. Just when despair threatened to engulf him, he heard a familiar bark. There was Capsize, his eyes searching anxiously for his master. The dog licked Eugene's face, then barked again and disappeared into the surf. A moment later, he returned with another piece of debris and nudged it closer to Eugene. With a mix of horror and gratitude, Eugene realized what Capsize was trying to do. The dog wanted him to move to this piece of debris. It was close to the shore, and Eugene could see people on the beach waving to him. Capsize stayed by Eugene's side as the rescuers pulled him from the water. When they finally reached the beach, Eugene collapsed onto the sand. He was exhausted, injured, and freezing cold. But as he looked around, he saw that his wife and children were alive. Mrs. Bishop rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. She embraced her husband, whispering, "You're alive." "Oh, thank God." Their children were also there, safe and sound. But as the family held each other close, none of them noticed Capsize collapse a few feet away. The dog was bleeding. He had cuts on his paws, and his fur was matted with seaweed. But those injuries weren't what concerned the Bishops. Capsize wasn't moving. At first, they thought he was just tired. After all, he had been swimming for hours. But as the minutes passed, they realized that something was wrong. Capsize wasn't getting up. Eugene Bishop knelt beside the dog, his voice filled with concern. "Capsize, come on, boy. You did it. You saved us." But the dog didn't respond. Eugene felt for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. Quickly, he and his sons lifted Capsize onto the wagon that the rescuers had brought. They carried the dog home, hoping that rest would help him recover. But when they examined him more closely, they saw that he was suffering from exposure. The dog's body was cold, and despite their efforts, they couldn't revive him. Eugene cradled Capsize as the dog took his last breath. He whispered, "Good boy, Capsize. You were the best dog a man could ask for." News of Capsize's heroic deeds spread like wildfire. People came from far and wide to hear the story of the dog who saved an entire family. The Bishops were forever grateful for Capsize's bravery, but they also mourned the loss of their beloved pet. They buried him in their backyard, placing a simple headstone at his grave. Over the years, stories of Capsize's heroism were passed down. Through generations, his memory lived on, reminding people of the unwavering love and loyalty of a dog. This amazing dog had given his life to save the family he loved. But sometimes it wasn't easy being a dog. Watch this video about a dog who killed his owner's son. But you won't believe why.